How about now? Much better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that still works. Okay, great. Thank you very much for taking the time to stay and not leaving while we solve the technical issues. Now we're casting through the Apple TV, so hopefully it will work because I'm on an Apple, not a Windows machine, right? Everybody knows Apple always works, right? So thanks to Henrik, I'm here. Henrik is my former manager, right? Previously working at Akamai for a very long time. Then I moved into where I'm at now. I'm at Snyk nowadays. Simply because I guess you could say, you kind of touched upon it, right? You know, we need to stop doing security to the right, and we want to move security to the left, right? And Snyk as a company is like a pioneer within DevSecOps, right? We started from the ground up building security tools for developers, right? How many of you guys have heard about Snyk before? Anyone using it? Almost half, right? So that's amazing. Great, happy to see that. For anyone who doesn't know us at all, right? So our whole mission really is to cover the whole SDLC. So from, you'll see in a minute, right? From the IDE to the deployment, going through, let's move to the next slide. This one actually, right? So going through code to the Git repository through the CI/CD, and eventually do some stuff at the production point of view as well, right? I guess you could say we're kind of shifting the strategy a little bit there. We didn't have cloud products, or we do have some cloud products, but we're not putting as much focus into that nowadays. We're just trying to make, I guess you could say, all this stuff on the left side even more stronger, and doing some app risk stuff as well, most recently. So in preparation for this talk, Henrik, where did you go?
He's hiding up here.
I'm going to talk about Henrik again. Henrik asked me to provide a bio, and I was like, I don't know. I don't like to write about myself, so I told him I'm just going to do ChatGPT about myself. So you can do it. I don't know if you actually did it. Did you?
Yeah, I did.
You did, right? So my bio in the Meetup, on the Meetup page is, ChatGPT. That's really what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to spend more time to talk about Snyk now. You can ask me later. So let's dig into to AI, right? Let's flip the question. Anyone here not using generative AI today? All hands is down. I'm so happy about that as well, right? We're all using it, right? And that was kind of my point, letting you know that Henrik actually pulled, my bio through ChatGPT, right? It's just I don't know, it's just a normal process, I think, nowadays in everybody's life to use some sort of generative AI whenever you just need to do something, right? Previously, I Googled, I still Google. But if I want, more specific details, naturally I'm going to turn to my generative AI, no matter what it actually, what the actual need is, right? Depending on how you use AI, there's going to be security implications, right? A lot of stuff to consider, and we're going to focus on coding with AI today, and what to think about specifically when using these type of tools. Right, moving over here, as an example, AI will make stuff up. I didn't have time to put any new stuff in here, like these are from last year, but I bet you there's going to be quite a few examples, additional ones, that's been making the news around how AI is going to be wrong, right? And that's going to have consequences depending on where you use that AI. The main issue with this is that the AI doesn't know is wrong, right? Why? Because it's a training data set and mathematics on top of it, where the AI, the only purpose of the AI that you talk to is to give you an answer. It doesn't care about the answer it gives. It just needs to resemble the training data, right? It doesn't know, which we'll get into in a minute, right? If it's insecure. It doesn't know if it's true. Hopefully a lot of you have heard about hallucination, right? So this is a case of hallucination, AI hallucination, right? It just makes stuff up to serve you as a user. Right, secondly, a very big consideration, and you kind of touched upon it a little bit, right? You have to secure your code, and this is imperative when it comes to AI, right? You have to understand that by default, what you share with this AI, might or may or will be used as training data. That in turn will be used as answers to other companies that's using AI to produce, as in this example, code, right? So you mentioned secrets, right? Secret needs to be protected, but if you talk to an AI with Copilot, as an example, which is what we're going to talk or look at in a minute, that secret will be exposed in someone else's answer if it's pulled into the training data and eventually used in the AI inference. So fixing that, I'll get into that in at the very end. But one way of handling those type of things is deploying your own AIs, right? Don't use ChatGPT. Deploy your own model. A lot of them are open source, so you can just as well deploy them as yourself, and you just own everything in that sense, right? You get the efficiency of the AI, but you retain your data, right? So what about code? We naturally have a lot of research here, but going back to what we just talked about, right? It's security and quality that's of the essence here, and we all agree that these tools are developer superchargers, right? GitHub themselves say that, and we saw it when I asked you, right? 92% of all developers use AI. 57% complete tasks faster than the ones who don't. And 27% are more likely to complete the tasks than those who don't, right? So these are all great numbers, but what's the problem? Well, New York University also pointed out that, 40% of the code that the AIs produce are actually vulnerable with various vulnerabilities. That's one thing, but maybe the more worrying thing is that the developers are more likely to believe they wrote secure code because it's an AI that told them so, right? So they're like, the AI is smarter than me because I couldn't solve the issue, but the AI could, so that code that came back was, probably secure, right? But it's definitely not, as you'll see in the hands-on in a minute. Right, so in summary, we're producing more code at a greater speed, but we're on a trajectory to just, put a lot of vulnerabilities out there in our code if we don't do a lot of the things that Johan talked about with the type of tools that Snyk provide, as an example. So a few common use cases for generative AI in development, like the first three here, they're fairly safe, right? Adding comments, summarizing code, writing README docs, right? Who cares? Those won't be vulnerable. It's not like anyone is going to abuse them. But the other four, refactoring code, providing templates, pair programming, you talked about code reviews, right? Pair programming, for those who don't, use it, companies, it's basically you sit as two developers and you code together, right? So one codes and the other one basically helps out and reviews live, if you want to call it, right? So GenAI can replace the pair coder, right? That's the point here. Others see the AIs as basically the Stack Overflow replacer as well. So we're going to look at a few examples of how this can look and what you can do about it, and what you would be able to see if you did your due diligence, right? First of all, I'm going to use Copilot. This is like the only setting related to privacy. You can't find it in the plugin itself in the IDE. This is only available at github.com for your account that you're using with Copilot, right? So if you're a developer that typically maybe don't go into the settings of Copilot inside of GitHub, you will never see that one. Apart maybe from the first time you set it up. But I mean, you're probably like me, right? When you start it, you just go like, yeah, enable it, go, right? And then you have Copilot in your IDE. So anyone who cares about not sharing your source code, your intellectual property with GitHub, untick this box if it is not unticked. And I haven't checked the others, but I bet Gemini and all of those have something similar. Right. So let's move to the fun stuff, if we can get it up here. And I want my browser. Right. So what you have here, it's a Java application. I let the guys over there know. I have no clue about Java, right? So I stole this from our DevRel team. So don't ask me anything about the code. I'm not going to be able to answer it, right? I'm an old PHP developer. But I got everything working at least. So it's a blank page now. So it's a blank index page. And as you might have caught here, right? So the first task we're going to do with the Copilot is to basically complete this homepage. Get the navigation in there. And in this case, it's a like an event application, right? So we want the talks table, basically, right? So if we move over here, I'm going to sheet because I want this to work, obviously. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert a navigation fragment. So these fragments already exist in the code, right? So if I open this one up here we have that fragment, and that's the one I want Copilot to add, right? So we can see that it immediately understands what I want based on, and this is how Copilot works, right? It looks at the whole repository you're working in, finds what's already there, and then based on that tries to suggest what it actually should add, right? So if I don't do that, right? Let's say I just do it like this. It typically proposes code. Now this time it didn't, right? So you can never trust AI to know what you expect it to do, right? So earlier it basically added. Oh no, okay. So it wants to add a CSS file, right? But earlier it added like an H1 title, oh, welcome to the OWASP meeting, yada yada, stuff like that, right? So it just tries, like I said in the beginning, right? It just tries to figure out what you might want to do, right? But let's complete this route. So we get that. We get the actual table, hopefully here, right? And the server is live reloading in the background, so it should work, right? Okay, so now we have the actual page. We have the talks. So my name should be here. And the actual, the index page is done, right? So the next step in this is making that table searchable, right? So take user input and filter that result based on the matches, right, that come up, right? So if I try it now, right, I'm just going to search for my name. Nothing comes up because the search function isn't actually implemented yet, right? So let's kill that. We don't need that anymore. The search function is in here, and now it returns null, which is why we get no talks at all. Let me scroll down here, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to lowercase input so we can search in the descriptions as well. Then we're going to create a SQL query to fetch the talks that match. Then we're going to execute that, and then we're going to return the results. And we're going to do this one line by line because for some reason, I don't know why, Copilot can't understand multiple lines. So we're just going to add that. There we go, right? So that's the first one. We're going to copy this, add that, and wait for it, right? So it created the actual query. And now it already suggests what it expects me to ask for. And then finally, this one is going to be easy, right? So it knows I want to return the results, return talks. So that's the, let's just click allow. No security consciousness here. So now the search function should work, and I end up at the login because the server is rebooting. That's why. So let's search for Fredrik again, and it should work, right? So that works. So the search function is fine now. So let's ship this to our repo. Right, so that's been pushed up here into that branch, right? So let's create the pull request. And while that is happening, or what's actually happening is Snyk is going to run, right? So it's going to be running the different scans. Going back to what Johan talked about, we want to inject security or integrate security in every single step of the SDLC. Anyone want to tell me what's wrong with the code that Copilot added? Yes. So exactly right. So over here, I was kind enough to make the the IDE larger, but you actually couldn't see the input, right? So why is this a SQL injection?
It's untrusted input from the user.
Exactly. And if we look at the PR, that's exactly what's being said there as well, right? So you have a high vulnerability, and if we look at that specific vulnerability, it's going to say that it's a SQL injection. And how the Snyk SaaS works is, let me pull this one up here, like full details, is that it looks at the data flow, the full data flow between, in this case, between two files, so the home controller and the search repository. And it finds the source, over here, like where's that input actually being entered, and then what's called the sink, right? Where is that input dropped? And if there isn't a sanitization between those lines or in that flow, it is a vulnerability, right? So you always want to, like if we talk about like a legacy SaaS scanners, even if we wouldn't have the source, it would probably mark this as an issue because it has a sink, right? So the sink is in the query. You can clearly see in the query that it is a SQL injection risk, but if there isn't a source, it can never be executed, right? So that's one way that you can say Snyk tries to like lift the noise from you as developers. We don't want to show you vulnerabilities that aren't actually executable. If you know more about this type of business, you know that there's a lot of talk about reachability as well, right? So the code might exist as a vulnerability, you know, in a framed box, but can actually reach it from somewhere else. And that might be reachable within code, like is a open source package actually loaded into memory so that code can be executed? Or is it reachable from the internet? If it's not, yeah, then you might not consider that vulnerability reachable. So that's one thing Snyk works a lot with, to basically show you vulnerabilities that are actually relevant.
But what do you mean, Fredrik, if like the input would be an environment variable, it would still tag that because the sync is still there.
Mm-hmm.
But the severity might be lower in that case, or is that static?
Generally, there's a behind the scenes, we don't see that here for some reason. I don't actually understand why. Probably because it doesn't come from the SCM scan or the CLI scan. There's a risk score as well attached to it. That doesn't show here. But depending on the integration, there's a risk score that takes in different risk factors, right? So yes, it's a SQL injection, but depending on these and these and these risk factors, we might lower the score.
A question here. Is it possible to even get this even more to the left, like even in the IDE, this kind of information?
You're getting ahead of yourself. So another thing, right? If you're like me, I attended university in like 2003, I think. I had no security training, right? And there was an ask on the chat earlier, right, about, okay, how do we actually learn more about this, right? And I think someone mentioned SANS. The SANS training, that's super expensive, right? So Snyk does provide free training for all these type of things, right? In an interactive, kind of way, right? So you can choose your ecosystem, like C#, Go, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, and so on, and you can actually interactively test these type of issues out if you want to do that. And yeah, I mean, we have topics for everything, right? So anyone who wants to learn more about this can do that, right? So before we look at the idea, right? So let's try to exploit this, right? Because we want to know if this, that's for the matter of this talk, want to know that it actually works, right? So we have a SQL injection string here, and for fun, if I would be in my daily job, right, trying to figure stuff out, I would ask GenAI, right? Explain this. Now I'm going to sheet and say SQL injection string, right? And it's going to say, hopefully, that it closes the initial query, right? So if you go back to the code, right? So the initial query goes basically over this part here, right? But by adding, a follow percentage like that, and let's see, we're closing the initial query, the one you see here, and then we just add our own query afterwards. That, which in this case is update all talks that are mine, speaker ID number 1, to current timestamp, basically. So to validate that that actually works, and let's reload, you can see now that I'm the top speaker for every talk, and all my talks are at the same time, right? So that's how, just generically how a SQL injection works. You close the original query, you add your own query to that. So the question was about the IDE then, right? Naturally, we put a lot of focus at Snyk in enabling the developers to do all of this as they code, right? Because you don't want to push that to PR and then have whoever reviews that call you out and you added a vulnerability, fix it, and redo your work, basically. You want to see these vulnerabilities as you code. So let's pick up Snyk here. I've disabled it for the initial part, so now it's enabled, and you can see it runs here. And let me just make them a little bit smaller because we don't need that. So what happens is it runs once, and it takes a little long time, and then it caches the results, and then it redoes it, on every save, right? So as you can see here, it pointed out exactly the same vulnerability as the PR check did, right? You have the data flow. It points out exactly where the issue is if you do it here, but obviously it's also in the, now I can't see because the zoom stuff is in the way. It also points it out here, right? So I can hover over that and see that, you have this SQL injection in the code. Here's the score I was talking about that we couldn't see in the PR. Right, so in this case, it's a 784 for various reasons. Right, so to fix this, we obviously want Copilot to do it, right? So anyone here want to tell me how I would fix, or how I typically could fix this SQL query or this SQL injection? What should I have done?
Not use Copilot.
Right.
Parameterize your query.
Ah, there we have it. Parameterize it, or let me scroll down. Named parameters. So let's kill this. I think this is enough. I only need, I need that. So now I'm telling it to create a query using named parameters instead, right? So in this case, you can't basically execute a SQL query because everything is going to be escaped, right? And then we need to set that parameter as well, otherwise it will not work. Right? So first of all, we can obviously see, oh no, what's happening? Oh, it's Java. Always Java. Right? You might have picked up that this one went from red to gray, which indicates that the issue is gone, right? So now that's fixed. And just to be sure, I can redo this. I'm still there. But by the way, when the server reloads itself, it actually recreates all the full database, right? So that's why it's back to normal. But if I run the SQL injection again, it should not work, right? So now it just says no talks found, because there's nothing in the query, right? Because it just escapes it. Right, so at this point you probably figure out, like, I'm following a script here, right? Which my DevRel team gave me, and that's boring, right? So I thought, let's escape the script and do some stuff live instead, right? So there were 5 more examples, but I figured, like, it's funny with a live audience to actually do this live. I did prepare one example just to make sure that it actually kind of worked, but we'll do one live as well, right? So in this case, let me get over here, and we should also change the setting of Snyk to all issues, right? So this is very important, by the way. When you, as a developer, you hate security, right? Everyone hates security. No one wants to deal with security stuff, right? So traditionally, you know, if you as a developer install this type of tool, you're going to get riddled, you know, with 150 vulnerabilities. It's like, oh my God, no one, you know, have the time to fix 150 vulnerabilities. You just put everything in backlog, right? So the tool itself, and how I used it the first time here, was net new issues, right? So the only change or vulnerability you introduce compared to the main branch, or whichever branch, you know, is your default branch, you'll only see those issues, right? But in this case, the second example, I won't actually see all issues. Otherwise, we won't see anything. So I'm changing that. I need to move this away so I see again. And what I asked Copilot basically was this: create a node web app that allows users to upload PDF files and then download them. So it's great, right? So it gives me all of the different instructions on how to do this. I can push these commands to my terminal here and basically do everything that's needed to get this working. And I did test it, and the actual server works fine. But the interesting part, obviously, is the Express server and middleware, right? Let's rerun the scan and see what we actually get with, again, these very simple instructions. So the point with the previous examples was, or the previous example was, you have to know how you do secure code to get secure code, and give that in the prompt to the AI, or the AI will typically give you insecure code. Let's see. Right. So in that example, we got quite a lot of, I'll bring those out first, right? Quite a lot of like Express issues. Apart from this one, right? So you know, it gives you an example of using a SHA-1 hash, right? Which is pretty bad generally. And then there are a lot of stuff in here that's related to yes, setting up the server, right? So I don't care too much about those now. The ones that are a little bit more worrying that you typically would see and want to fix are like cross-site scripting, obviously, path traversal and stuff like that. So just for fun, let's bring this to Gemini instead. So we'll ask Gemini the exact same thing and see how good that one does. So I think I'll figure this out. No, let's see what it does with that. Hopefully, yeah, right, great. So it gives us kind of similar instructions. Install the dependencies. So it's multi-core. Let's see. It's one index.js file. I just want to see if it gives me anything more. Okay, the client-side implementation. Let's ignore that. Let's only copy the server-side code. Where is it? Down here. And let's replace that. And just save it and see what we get. If it's better or worse. Let's see. You just fixed this information exposure issue. Yeah, because I deleted all the code. Yeah! Great. That's hilarious. So it actually gives us exactly the same amount. But we got rid of the cross-site scripting, right? So it actually did better, right? So Gemini, yay. One plus point for Gemini compared to Copilot. But my point in using Gemini here as well is I always want to point out that no one is better than the other, to be honest, right? I mean, in this case, it was just luck, I guess, that we didn't get a cross-site scripting vulnerability. But all of them will give you insecure code by default. So let's do one completely from scratch. And
but did you think that you influenced the prompt by talking about SQL injections before in the same context? And that's why it's removed that cross-site scripting?
Who knows? Maybe. Could absolutely be. So it's a good you asked that, right? But that's actually why I'm opening a completely new window, because it loses the context if I go to another, right? So the same thing, like when I prepare for this talk, I delete the full repo and I git clone it again and start from the main branch to make sure that it actually doesn't use any of the previous knowledge. Otherwise, yes, it will reuse as much as possible, but from a context point of view. So let's make the CD AI app. So let's see. Let's ask it something more. Create a web app. I'm not going to tell it no this time, just for fun. That lets users post topics and questions that users can view and vote on. right? So let's follow the instructions. npm install express and body. Oops. Body parser. It typically gives you the same, at least when it creates node applications, it typically uses the same thing all over again. Right, touch server.js. And let's copy all of this code. What else is there? And then it's just pulling stuff in. What's this? Oh, there's an app.js as well. Oh, yay, 2 files. Touch app.js. And let's copy all of this into that. That's the first time I actually get 2 files. Oh no, I'm not there. Open folder. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, in here. There we have it. Server.js, paste, app.js. Oh no, I lost the context of the chat. Damn. Okay. Oh well. We got that at least. That's my bad. As I said, it retains the actual everything within the same window, right? So there you saw that. I lost it.
Server as a part of the prompt and just ask it for the client side.
What? Come again?
If you paste this code into the prompt and then you ask it for the app.js.
Yeah, but I don't. It won't matter, right? I don't think it's going to recreate it.
Okay.
Let's see. Is it done? Yeah, it's done. 6 issues. So I'm going to do one more thing before we move on. Let's see what this. So that's Express again. Yeah. So as I said earlier, right? A lot of these are like, oh, you misconfigured Express. I mean, that's obviously an issue as well, but some of them aren't. Probably won't happen in a live environment. But yeah, all of them. Oh, that's boring. So we didn't get any fun stuff. Either way, so let's go back to the other one and ask this one. I think it is, right? Let's ask it. Is the code above? Let's see if it knows. You remember I said in the very beginning that it usually don't know, right? Until you kind of ask it, right? Then it goes like, oh, well, maybe not, right? Let's see what it says, right? Is the above code production ready? It's functional, but here's some improvements. Oh, right. So it says security enhancements to prevent directory traversal attacks. Error handling, logging environment, user environment configuration. So again, that goes back to what I said when I started the coding parts. If you don't tell it what's needed, you won't get it ever, right? You have to be very specific. And if you didn't know, there are prompt training courses online and a lot of cheat sheets out there to prompt AIs correctly, right? So if you haven't looked at any of those, you probably want to do that, right? There's even a new job role out there, prompt engineer. If you haven't heard about that, you can become a prompt engineer as well if you want to just talk to AIs all day long, right? Right. Let's go back to the slides. So how do we move on from here? We've already talked about it. You already mentioned it, right? It all starts with education, understanding. Just increasing the size on the screen here a little bit. Understanding what's actually going on, right? If you work at a smaller corporation, you probably don't have AI policies and guidelines. If you work at a large corporation, I hope you do, right? Because a lot of times there's more at stake, right? You typically have enterprise customers that rely on you doing the correct stuff and so on, right? And this applies to whatever you do with AI, right? So now we only talked about using AI, but if you are a developer that builds AI, integrates AI, embeds AI into your own applications, there are a lot of different things to talk about or think of, right? Reiterating, you have to understand what security issues might pop up to see them and understand them and know how to mitigate them and fix them. In the beginning, we talked about your sensitive data and IP. If you are working with very sensitive data, you have to figure out and add to the policies that we're mentioning at the top, that you are not allowed, at Snyk, right? You are not allowed to paste source code into Copilot or whatever, right? That's part of our policies. Ever. Make education actionable. So I guess my point here is like, it shouldn't be only an onboarding topic when a new employee enters the team. As with any education, it needs to be recurring. Like you mentioned during your talk, stuff get old, new stuff happens and get added, right? So security should always be recurring things, and you should always do knowledge transfer. But possibly more important, never trust an AI and always verify what the output or the output it actually gives. And you should treat an AI like a junior developer that hasn't a single clue about what it actually does. You guys are the experienced programmers, right? You know, hopefully, or you're at least trying to get better at it, what's right or wrong. And test and validate everything in as many steps as possible. Like, as developers, you don't want to get to the end of a cycle where we have that point in time, possibly have that point in time security testing, and have the security team push all your code back to you when you rather go to the next cycle or work on a cooldown feature to do something else, right? So get rid of the vulnerabilities as soon as possible in your SDLC. So how do you move on from here, right? What else is there, right? If you didn't know, there is an OWASP top 10 for LLMs. And yes, as most of you, I hope, know the regular OWASP top 10 stuff, like the APIs, and yeah, as I said, like the standard one. You should learn the OWASP top 10 LLM as well. We have same thing here, like we discussed about the SQL injections. Oh, now you lost that one. You can't see it. Let me move out of that and go here. Right, there's a course for the LLM top 10 specifically. So if you want some more interactive course for that, you can do that. There's a cheat sheet, right? So today we talked about, maybe not the first one, but I added it there anyway, because it's kind of dependent on how you use AI, right? So if you would be using AI as an embedded product or tooling, then LLM02 would be obviously of interest, right? So if you integrate an AI and ask it for data to use somewhere else in your system, you have to verify that whatever you get from that AI and just push it into the next step in your data flow, it needs to be sanitized, right? Supply chain. You talk a lot about supply chain vulnerabilities. I added 2x here because I can see 2 of them. Anyone can tell me which 2 supply chain attacks issues we had in everything that we just went through? You can see one of them. Yeah. No one? Package managers.
Unnamed problems.
Huh?
Unnamed problems.
Yeah. Package managers, right? If you ask an AI to, like I did, create an app, it's gonna use third-party packages that you need to know are secure, right? As you mentioned, you need to scan your open source packages or your open source code to make sure that you don't bring in someone else's code that's vulnerable. The other one is actually related to another. Let's bring up the cheat sheet. Another of the LLMs, which is, let me see if I can see it here, training data poisoning, right? Let's say that your training data is poisoned, and that poison is a supply chain attack, right? Then you are affected by this in combination with training data poisoning.
Another big thing as well. Like
Go.
You can't. So data and instructions are in the same text. So it's like, hey, what's in this text? Ignore everything. Do this instead.
Yeah. Exactly. I probably don't need to explain this one because that's what kind of the whole talk has been about. There's issues with over-reliance. Finally, there's, I mean, you mentioned it, right? There's everything out there on the internet, right? So these are just Snyk examples, right? So there's also like blog posts about the best practices for developing with AI, obviously closely related to the LLM. Yeah.
I'm curious about the over-reliance part because this talk so far, it's you have asked the AI to write like an application from scratch. I don't think that is like how people usually use it.
Well,
Or is it perhaps?
so let's,
But
yeah, go ahead.
Do the vulnerabilities like pop up in the same? Do they show up in the same manner if you don't use it for the whole software?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's like the first example I showed you, right? When he has added comments in the code and asked it to fix one function in my existing application. Right.
I guess, yeah.
So any of these examples, right? Let's remove that, right? So obviously the first one was an issue. I asked it to make the search table, the talk table searchable. Yes. That renders a SIG reaction. This one allows users to personalize profile, adds a path traversal. Unique talk page per talk. I have no idea. I haven't actually run through those, so I don't know what they actually do, what vulnerabilities it brings. But any snippet that an AI will add may contain vulnerabilities.
Like you're gonna get an IDOR for probably indirect object reference, like with the those kind of things. I would imagine with the unique page IDs and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess my question was, do you think that people are over-reliant in general on LLM?
So what I was gonna say there was like me as a non-software engineer, right? I consider myself as a hobby developer, right? If you go outside of the engineering space and look at what I'm doing, field engineering, where you have 80% that actually aren't engineers, they will ask AI for a complete, script to do a full task. They will ask for a complete application, right? And maybe we share that with our customers. Hopefully not without, looking for vulnerabilities, but that's the way it works, right? Especially if there are teams that aren't developers, right? So a lot of the time we talk to like the DevSecOps engineers or the SREs that aren't, sorry if anyone is on SRE here, but aren't real, software engineers. If you would ask a software engineer, right? They're just running applications and no. What? Who?
Why is that he's not the software engineer?
Don't ask me. Ask the software engineers. They're the ones telling it, saying it. I'm not doing it. I'm replaying what they're saying, right? They don't often, or not often maybe, but sometimes they don't code as much as the software engineers, right? So they want to take shortcuts to make tooling or whatever it might be, right? So it's obviously just as important there as well. So I'm at the end of the talk, so just keep the questions coming. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you ask secure solution, how confident are you that it actually gives you a secure solution?
Well, I mean,
Doesn't hallucinate,
yeah,
doesn't
you
tell you it's
exactly right. You can't be confident, but the chance of it being secure will be higher for sure. Absolutely. So, if I would have rewritten those, I would have said, make it secure, right? Or protect the code from these and these and these vulnerabilities. Maybe I could say like, protect me from, make sure that it isn't vulnerable to, you know, the OWASP top 10.
So first, a shout out to your company and your podcast. It's really good.
I forgot to say.
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast and look at YouTube.
It's really good.
Thanks.
Anyhow, the question. So I can see. So you generated a function and it had issues in it, and I can imagine if you ask it to generate these functions over and over again, you would see a certain kind of issues. Have you tried to do statistics on what type of things are likely to pop up in other people's?
No, we haven't done that.
Would you say that there is a higher risk than people copying stuff from Stack Overflow? Because basically that's one of the foundation in the training data. So you would imagine that the result would sort of be similar.
Yeah, exactly.
So like people that are just copying things from
Yeah.
Overflow and copying things from ChatGPT or
Exactly.
similar are probably in the same ballpark of people. So
Yeah.
At least in Stack Overflow you see all the comments.
they don't read that. They just copy the code and
No, but you're absolutely, and that's why
it's always going to be a set of people doing that. So.
Absolutely. And that's
Or
why
maybe
that is there.
This is the truth. When you get it from the co-pilot, then it's like,
Yeah.
So we try to help a little bit with this. I don't know if you caught that, right? But if you look at the vulnerabilities here, you'll have, and now I might set myself up here for krokben, as we say in Swedish. But we have an AI as well that in turn can generate new code to fix these vulnerabilities, right? And you know, there's always the case of, well, are you sure that your AI actually produces secure code? And obviously, as a security company, we work a lot to protect ourselves against those type of statements, right? But that's one way we have tried to help out even further than just detecting the issues, right? So that's for fun. Let's see if it can actually generate a path traversal fix. Oh, here if okay, then I have to pick one of them. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Question from the chat.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat.
Let's see. Oh, 8 of them, but maybe not all of them are. Oh, language support. So, what is the actual question? Do I have it somewhere here? I can't find any question. Anyone else?
So the question is, so when you were presenting the Snyk learning platform,
Mhm.
you shared the link.
Yeah.
One person checked it out, but they couldn't find material on DevSecOps. Do you have any advice?
Oh, right. Yeah, that was me hoping that it would be there.
I have some tip on finding content. So if you Google GitHub plus awesome and then whatever it is you're after. So just GitHub awesome DevSecOps.
So like this,
awesome
GitHub
helpdesk or
awesome DevSecOps.
Yeah, and then you will get good link farms for tools, training. Of course, you have to verify so that you don't real weird. But
Yeah. So if whoever asked that online doesn't hear the answer, so you can see it in the chat, right? Google for GitHub awesome DevSecOps.
But maybe we should round up. But
Yep.
Of course, Fredrik could be here for a little bit, I guess.
Yes.
Short term. If anybody wants to ask him questions in person. I think it's about 8:10 now.
Yeah.
And so we'll be shutting down the Zoom meeting, but we've got until 8:30 to mingle. If we could just ask you on your way out at 8:31 Central Time. If you can take your cans and bottles, there's recycling. So for everybody who's joined us in Zoom, thanks very much, and I hope we'll see you at the next OWASP meeting. And I think we can give a big round of applause to both of our speakers.
Apple. Thank you very much.